Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome back. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend it here with me. I appreciate it so much. So in today's video, I'm going to be duping newer palettes. And when I say duping, I don't really mean in like a shade for shade kind of a way. I just mean that these palettes are similar enough that if you have one in your collection already, you may not feel the need to buy the newer one. And I'm not here to suck all the fun out of buying makeup. Believe me, I am totally guilty of buying palettes that I already have similar ones of. But I just feel like if, you know, a color story really speaks to you and you know you're going to use the heck out of it, it makes sense to buy it. But I also know that a lot of you, myself included, are just trying to limit the amount of makeup that we buy. And this might really help us to kind of rein in those urges a little bit, give us a little bit of willpower. And also in this video, I'm going to be sharing some more affordable alternatives as well. So if maybe buying new makeup isn't really in your budget right now, or at least buying high-end palettes, maybe I can show you something that is a little bit more affordable and very similar. So let's go ahead and jump right in and get started. Alright, so some of these palettes I do have already on hand and I'll be able to show you comparison swatches, but other ones I may not have one or the other or both, so I'm just going to go ahead and put up photos from online, and that way you can kind of at least get a good idea of how similar they really are. So first up, I'm actually going to talk about two new palettes that both are pretty much launching at the exact same time. I saw them on Trendmood like a couple of posts away from each other and they looked so similar just looking at them in her Instagram grid. I was like, wow, it was just so obvious to me. So the first one is the new ColourPop You Are a Cutie palette, and this is a Valentine's one. I literally just got this, so I haven't even had the time to swatch it yet, but I will show you swatches in this video, at least just so you can see what this looks like. But I don't currently have the other one, which is the Viseart Paris Edit palette, and I just feel like these are so similar. Actually, I'll just put up a side-by-side photo so you can see what they look like together. And they really do just have the same vibes going on. You have that matte peachy shade in there, you have that dark shimmery navy blue, you have the deep shimmery purple, you have the gold shimmer, you have that light kind of ivory tone, and the matte kind of dusty purpley lavender shades. I mean, they really just look so super close. I feel like you could definitely do one versus the other. I don't feel like I need to buy both. When I saw that Viseart palette coming out, I was like, I want this. It's my vibe. I love soft colors like that. But then I saw the ColourPop one and I was like, you know what? This one's $18. It's a lot less expensive, and also ColourPop's formula is amazing. So it just didn't really make sense for me to buy them both. The next one is one that actually someone who I follow on Instagram tagged me in, and she had put these two palettes together. I never would have found it, so I'm very grateful to her for tagging me because I wanted to include it in this video. And I'll also put her name on the screen, her Instagram handle, in case you want to go check out her page. She does these dupes from time to time. So she found a pretty close dupe for the new Natasha Denona Love palette, which is $65. And the dupe is the Makeup Revolution Forever Flawless Unconditional Love palette. So when I saw these two side by side, I really saw so many similarities between the color stories. Granted, they're definitely not exact dupes, but if you've been looking for kind of like a Valentine's Day inspired type of palette with the pinks and the purples along with some golds and neutrals, I feel like the Makeup Revolution one is incredibly similar. So I actually have both palettes. I just got the Natasha Denona one today. I'm actually wearing it on my eyes. I think it's a beautiful palette, but this one is really close, and I went ahead and did some kind of side-by-side comparisons so you can see up close what they actually look like versus the photos from online. And I think in person they do look incredibly similar, and I also swatched them side by side. And again, they're definitely not shade for shade dupes, but I do think that you can create some really similar looks with both of them. And the Makeup Revolution one has an amazing formula. I think their formula is really good in the Forever Flawless palettes. So if you have that one already, you may not feel like you need the new Natasha Denona one. And if you don't have either one, but you're kind of looking for a palette like this, or you've been wanting the Natasha one, maybe it makes sense to just spend $15 and get the Makeup Revolution. Another dupe for the Natasha Denona Love palette, which I actually don't have because it hasn't been released yet, but I saw this online, and again, I did see some similarities between the two, and it's the new Profusion Lovestruck palette. This one's $13, and I got an email that it was coming out, and then they actually retracted that and said it wasn't coming out yet, it was an error. So I'm hoping that it launches soon because I think it's absolutely beautiful, and again, it has a very similar vibe with those pink and purple shades in in it, not to mention it has a ton of neutrals. It has so many more shades than the Natasha one. And Profusion's formula, if you guys haven't tried it, is so good for the price. I mean, it's not maybe Natasha Denona level quality, but it's close, at least in my opinion. So this is definitely another one to check out when it launches. So then my next dupe is one for the Anastasia Carli Bybel palette, and that one is $45, and I found the BH Cosmetics Smitten in Switzerland palette, which is $16, to be incredibly similar to this one. I just thought the color stories looked super, super close. Now, granted, the Smitten in Switzerland palette has those two green shades that the Carli Bybel doesn't have, but if you cover those green shades up, it looks almost identical otherwise. It's just a really close color story, and that one is so much less expensive. I didn't end up buying the Carli Bybel palette, so I may end up picking up the BH Cosmetics one just because I love their formula. I've loved those travel palettes in the past. I thought they were really great, and I do like the color story. So if you haven't purchased the Carli Bybel palette yet and you're still kind of thinking it over or waiting for a sale, maybe just go with the BH one. It's a lot cheaper, and I definitely think the formula is pretty close to ABH. Or if you already have the Carli Bybel palette and you've been eyeing that BH Cosmetics one that just came out, maybe you'll feel like it's too similar to warrant a purchase. Next dupe I have is for the new Glam Light Cake palette. This, I don't know if it launched yet. Last time I checked, it said it was still in pre-order, but it's going to be launching any day now, depending on when this video goes up. But that one is $40, and I thought that the new BH Cosmetics Trendy in Tokyo palette looks, again, super similar to that one. The BH one is, again, $16, and it's just like a pretty fun rainbow palette and has a lot of the exact same colors in it that the Cake palette does. And speaking of rainbow palettes, Urban Decay is also coming out with one soon. It's called the Wired palette. That one's $39, and I also thought that that one looks incredibly similar to the BH Cosmetics Trendy in Tokyo. You have the blue, the pink, the purple, the green, the orange, the red. I mean, you basically have all of those colors already right there. Same thing with the Urban Decay versus the Glam Light one. I feel like if you've had your eye on any of these rainbow palettes, you probably don't need the others, just because they all incorporate very, very similar shades. And actually, another one that's a really close dupe for the Wired palette is the NYX Ultimate Shadow palette. This one's $18. And again, it has so many of the same colors in it. Maybe if you already own the NYX one, you won't feel like you have to run right out and buy the Urban Decay. Next up is the new Anastasia Beverly Hills Amrezy palette. I don't own this one yet, but I was trying to figure out what it reminded me of. I actually took to my Instagram stories and asked all of you guys over there, and I got so much help with this because it was bothering me, like, what the heck does it look like? And you guys answered that question for me, so thank you so much for that. And it was the Too Faced Palm Springs palette. These look so incredibly similar. They have almost identical shades. I think the Anastasia one has a few additional shades. It has 14 versus 12, but I mean, the Too Faced is basically missing the black shade and then that lighter shimmer towards the top left of the Anastasia palette. Other than that, I just feel like these are so super close. Another thing you guys were saying is that the Amrezy palette looks like a couple of different ABH palettes combined, and mostly Modern Renaissance, that the bottom row looked so much like Modern Renaissance, and then on the top you have some elements of Riviera with the gold and the bright blue, and then you also have the pink and purple shade from the Norvina palette. So if you have Norvina and Riviera and Modern Renaissance, maybe you don't necessarily need the Amrezy palette because you already have very similar colors in your collection already. Same thing with the Too Faced Palm Springs palette. I just feel like they're so similar. Another one I never would have thought of, but you guys mentioned it, is the Not a Basic Peach palette from Wet n Wild. This one, again, it does have some very similar shades in it. It has those warm tone neutrals. It has the pop of blue. The only thing that this one doesn't have is the light purple and then those two pinks. There's a darker pink in the Amrezy palette and then a lighter pink shimmer. So it doesn't have the pink and purple. It doesn't have a black shade, but other than that, the other shades seem like they kind of line up really well. So that's another one to think about as well. Another dupe I have is the new Maybelline Nudes of New York palette. You may have been eyeing this one up. I gave it a really good review. I think it's one of Maybelline's best palettes ever, if not their best palette ever. I just think the formula is so good on it, but it looks incredibly similar to Soft Glam. So I'll show you guys these up close side by side. I just think the tones in here are almost spot on with each other. You have that deep rusty brown red, you have the matte dusty purple, you have the golds, the neutrals. I mean, they all are very close. And I think when when you're looking at the swatches, you can really see how much they compare to each other. So if you already own Soft Glam, which I know so many of us do already, you may just want to go ahead and skip the Maybelline one because it's so close. And honestly, I think Anastasia's formula is a little bit better. The Maybelline one, while it's good for Maybelline, it still doesn't equal to this in my opinion. But that being said, if you're on a budget and you've always wanted to buy Soft Glam because you like the colors but didn't want to spend $45, I think the Maybelline one is a good alternative because the formula is very good. I think it's one of the better ones at the drugstore these days, and you can totally make almost the same looks as you can with Soft Glam. So next up, another palette that I just got very recently is the new Pillow Talk palette from Charlotte Tilbury. It's actually called the Pillow Talk Instant Eye palette. I just started using it, and so far I really have been enjoying the formula, but I was trying to think of what else it reminded me of in my collection, and I actually came up with a couple of different palettes that are very similar to this one. The first one being the Urban Decay Naked Cherry palette. So I'll go ahead and show you these side by side. And while I do think that the Charlotte Tilbury one has slightly more neutral shades, while the Urban Decay one leans a little more into those reddish shades, I do think when you see them swatched side by side, you can really appreciate how close they are, even while they're not exact shade for shade dupes. I think, again, you can create really similar looks with these. Another palette in my collection it reminded me a lot of is the Violet Voss Holy Grail palette. I think this one has, again, very, very similar tones in it, so I'll show you them close up side by side. I think the neutrals in both palettes are really close. Also, the Violet Voss has those deeper burgundy shimmers and that reddish matte that the Charlotte Tilbury has. So I think if you have the Violet Voss, you probably don't necessarily need to pick up the Charlotte Tilbury, especially because Violet Voss's formula is fantastic. I have no complaints about it whatsoever. I think the Holy Grail palette is awesome. And then the third palette from my collection that the Charlotte Tilbury reminded me of is the Pure Passion palette from Milani. So I'll go ahead and show you these side by side. I think the neutrals in both of these palettes are like the same kind of tones. Also, the Milani has those deeper burgundy shimmers. The only thing it's actually missing is the deeper red matte shade at the end of the Charlotte Tilbury palette. So I didn't put that in the comparison swatches, but if you look at the rest of the shades in both palettes, I think that they, again, are just very, very close. But I think with either of these, you're going to basically create like a soft, warm tone neutral look, and that's kind of the vibe of both of these palettes. So while they're not exact dupes, they do have a very similar vibe. Alright, so last but not least, Makeup Revolution has launched some new Valentine's themed palettes called Heartbreakers. It's from their I Heart Revolution collection. And when I first saw these, I immediately thought of the ColourPop monochromatic palettes, their little 9 pans. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of show you comparisons between all of them. You have one that has like those reddish tones, not an exact dupe, it does have a pop of yellow in it, but very close. You have one that has those beautiful blues. Again, the Makeup Revolution isn't an exact dupe, but it's kind of like the same concept. You have that beautiful green one that looks like the Just My Luck palette from ColourPop. You have a purple one that looks like It's My Pleasure. I feel like this one is really, really close. There's also more of a neutral one that looks like the Going Coconuts palette. And then more of a pink tone one that looks a lot like the Blush Crush one. So I know those Makeup Revolution ones look so cute. They were tempting me like crazy, but then when I really thought about it, I actually have most of those monochromatic palettes from ColourPop, so it really didn't make sense. Not to mention the fact that Makeup Revolution's formula can be very hit or miss for me, and ColourPop is always very consistent. Their formula is always amazing, and their palettes are only a couple of dollars more. I think the Heartbreaker ones are like $7 each, I want to say, and the ColourPop are $12. So they're still within a really affordable drugstore range, but I think with ColourPop, you're getting more of like a high-end formula. Again, I haven't tried the Makeup Revolution, so I don't know. They could be amazing, but just in past experience, I feel like ColourPop has never let me down, where Makeup Revolution, it can be hit or miss. So anyway, guys, that is it for this video. If you like this video and you'd like me to do it semi-regularly when new palettes are coming out, I think it would be really fun. I would love to do it, so let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Also, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and want to see it again. Thank you all so much for watching. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button right here on the screen, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye, guys!